Okay, good morning, everyone. We've been looking at a few different things on mobile app development. Let me switch quickly to our Okay, let me quickly take you through the LMS here. I hope you're going through some of those additional material I'm posting here. So, for example, under week 1, I've posted some presentations, some YouTube video links and things like that. So last week we looked at usability. There are some very interesting video clips on that. So I won't be discussing these video clips during the class. I hope you go through the LMS and watch these clips. For example, there's one on how Android material design was conceptualized. So there's a lot of stories about how they cut paper, they folded it, they look at the light, they look at the shadows. Same story can be said about, for example, Apple or Microsoft, how they spend a lot of time in user experience by designing their user interfaces, right? And there's another very interesting one here, Android versus iOS UI design differences. Now, that's a very important one, because when it comes to designing for mobile, right now we have these two platforms. We used to have BlackBerry, we used to have Symbian, we used to have Microsoft Mobile. But as of today, 2023, we only have two, Android and Apple, iOS. But from the usability point of view, they are different. You need to watch this to understand what are the differences. Now, for example, on an Android, you have something called a tab menu on the top of the screen, right? So the tab is happening somewhere here on an Android. Whereas on an Apple, the tab is down here, right? So it's called the bottom navigation in Apple. So even the terminology is different, the word is different, and the design is different. So when you're designing, you need to know these two separately. But although we are using a hybrid mobile programming system, Flutter, which allows you to keep one code base run on both platforms, you can actually, even with Flutter, you can change the UI according to the platform specifics. So we will look at as to how to do that. So same application, when you're running on Android, you will see the Android normal screens. And when you're running the same thing on, let's say, Apple, you'll see the Apple specific screen there. All right. So very important clips that I shared here. I'm sharing the recording, I'm sharing the presentation, I'm also sharing an assignment or a tutorial in case there is any. Now today we are doing another very important one called design thinking, right? You notice for the last 4 weeks, we are looking at user experience and user design, right? We didn't jump into coding. Coding will start next week. User experience, user interfacing is extremely important when it comes to mobile application. Yes, the function, the features are important, but similarly, the user experience is very, very important. So one of the technique the companies are using nowadays in order to give a very good user experience is called design thinking. So today we will be looking at that. Under this also, I've shared few very interesting YouTube videos, articles, And also there's a another excellent project happening in India. So we will have a look at that as well, right? So let's jump into our presentation now. So, as I said, today's topic is design thinking. So two words, right? Design, and then there is thinking also. Why this thing? Why design thinking? Why can't we just get a designer to design? Yeah, we can, but then this go through a certain level where we try to understand the problem the user is having, and then try to come up with a solution to that. Now, this is not only for existing products, right? Many companies use this technique to come up with new products. This is very important. So if you want to come up with a new product and you go through a design thinking, you may be able to come up with a new product. There are so many new products we will discuss today as to how they arrived at that by going through this design thinking phase. Okay, so it's a very colorful graphic because there's a lot of thinking, creativity, different way of accessing the problem, and all that is there. And also, although this is just a concept, design thinking is a concept, there are many companies took the concept and then they came up with their own way of doing this, own way of solving this, right? So first we look at different companies and see how they solve this problem in their own way. All right. So in a summary, design thinking is about 5 different steps, right? Just 5 steps. So first, we'll go into detail. The first is empathize. Empathy means looking from the user's point of view. So you go to the user's side. We don't think and design, we go to the user and we sit with the user. We see what kind of problem they are going through. And then we define what the problem is, right? So empathize, learn about creative industries. So as an example, right? And then define is construct point of view based on user needs. See, point of view. Now, if you go back to empathize, how do you do that? If you look at the text top here, it says actor map, focus group, documentary research. What does that mean? Actor map. Actor is the user. One actor is one user. Now, for this problem, if there are more than one user, you go through more than one users, trying to understand each one's role, yeah, each one's problem. And then you figure out something called a focus group. That's another way to do that. Say, for example, in India, one of the biggest issues they have, especially in the rural India, is iodine deficiency. I think in Sri Lanka also we had an iodine deficiency. We came up with a different solution in Sri Lanka, right? So where does the iodine deficiency really hit? It hits the pregnant women or pregnant mothers, right? So if the mother does not get enough iodine, the child that is going to be born will have serious issues. Brain development, the body development, thinking capacity, all that will be a serious problem. So same problem was there in India as well. And how do you tell this to mothers? Okay, they could take vitamin or supplements, isn't it? But now in the rural India or even in rural Sri Lanka, those tablets or the vitamins might not reach them. And you need to sell that. So they may not have enough finances to buy that. So in a situation like that, what is the best way of doing it? How do you give iodine to the pregnant mothers? This is actually mostly for the ladies in India, right? The third one we can do is documentary research. You look at scientific publications, journals, newspaper articles, documentaries, all kind of stuff to understand where the issue is. And then you study this to listen to them. That is what is called empathize. When you do that, you will come up with lots of different cases, but you need to have some clarity, right? So people will tell all their problems, but we are not here to solve all the problems. So we need to figure out, okay, what is the most important aspect here, most important problem here? So to do that, there are lots of different tools available. Qualitative research, quantitative research, those are two famous research techniques we can use. And there is also social network analysis. So you look at as the society as a whole, either by way of technology or by way of listening to them, right? And look at what is going on. So do you do that to define the problem, right? Because like I said, they will say lots of different things, but you need to have clarity to pick up what is the most demanding issue here. That is defining. Number two, second step. Number three is called ideate. So now you listen to them, you understand their problem. Now you come up with ideas, not one, many ideas, right? So there are lots of tools again, storyboards, heuristic analysis, storytelling, different ways of coming up with ideas. So you can either engage the users or you can engage your group of people to come up with ideas, right? So in this process, you draw various things to come up with creative solutions. Now it says creative solution. Creative solution mean you need to go beyond your traditional thinking. You should be able to think anything freely. So you don't control what you are thinking, or it can be anything for that matter, right? So for example, after identifying the Indian iodine issue, they came up with all kinds of problems. Okay, how can we give them iodine? So can it be added to their food? Can it be given as pills? Can we do something else? Can we educate them? All that can be done. But remember, most of the people may not be educated. Some people don't like to take medicine or pills. They might think, that has side effects. So then, okay, what can we do? So you keep on ideating. That's the third step, right? The fourth one is testing your idea. Actually, not testing, prototyping your ideas. Meaning you come up with some samples to try out, right? So there are different ways of prototyping. So if it is a software, you build something called the MVP, minimum viable product. If it is a mobile phone application, you do the same thing. If it is a physical product, you can use maybe 3D printing or something to come up with a prototype and see how it looks, how it works, whether it is useful, things like that. For example, you want to design a joystick, right? A user-friendly joystick. So you look at the players, because these are the guys who are using the game stick, right? So you go and listen to their problems. They might say, okay, I want a wireless one. I want the battery to last full day. I want it to have feedback. I want it to have sound, all kinds of stuff they will say. So you need to define what they want, come up with ideas, and then try a prototype. Okay. So after you get multiple prototypes, you also need to go through certain iterations. So you also try various prototypes. And then when you are ready with something which you can take back and try with the group, that's when you do the testing, right? So you go and demonstrate and test your prototype to the real users, right? Now, how do you do that? Participatory action research, workshop, and then storytelling. So in the case of a joystick, you can give it to the users and say, right, use this. Tell us what you think. Or if it is a concept or something, you can get the group and then sit with them and go through your ideas again. You're testing your concepts, right? So in the case of India, what they did was they figure out the married women or women in general in India, not only married women, I believe it's women in general, they wear a bindi, it's called in India. Sri Lanka, I think we call it the pottua, right? So they thought every woman wears that because that's like a fashion item. So why can't we come up with a bindi that has iodine and which also can send the iodine through the skin, right? So that was an idea they got. So they wanted to now do a prototype, and they successfully came up with this idea, right? So if you look at our website, I've shared that. Okay, please. Yeah. It's called the life-saving dot, the bindi, right? So here's the solution, right? And you don't need to force anybody. It's no pill, nothing, and it comes just like any other bindi packet. And one of the issues they realized was cost, right? So it was 10 rupees, Indian rupees, for 30 bindis. So they can use it for 30 days, for 1 month. So for the 1 month supply of iodine, they only spend 10 rupees Indian, which is fairly okay price, right? So that is how they solve a problem in a very, very creative way, right? So that's one example. So what can we learn from here? How can we apply that to, let's say, designing of a mobile application or a software application or anything for that matter, right? That is the role of design thinking. So where did it started? In 2004, Hasso and Tom came up with a model, right? Where generally an engineer or a designer go on doing something. So generally these people bring in their experience, their knowledge and all that in order to do something new or design something new. But then they realize it might not solve the problem, or there may be other ways of fine-tuning that, right? And came the HCD, human-centered design process. So in that, you sit with the user, empathize, try to understand what the problem is, what are their issues, and then you work together, right? You work together. And number 3 is important, fail effectively. What does that mean? You keep trying various things, and then after failing multiple times, you will come up with a great product, right? So this is not a method or a way of doing things, but it's basically sitting with the user to understand the problem and solving it. Although originally it was about solving existing products, right? But later they realize if you can actually do this human-centered design, you can also come up with new products, right? Where there was no product, like for example, the bin, right? So if you can sit with people where there are issues, go through them, listen to them very carefully, you might be able to come up with something new also. So in our other examples, I'll show you some of the very interesting products they came up with from nothing, just by listening to users. So let's look at variations of this principle. Okay, so here's the original Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford, their way of doing things, which we are using for now. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. So this is what I explained a while back. 5 steps. So this was the original concept from the Stanford University. In fact, at Stanford, they have an Institute of Design, specifically looking at design-related issues. So whether it is a chair or a mobile app or a bindi or some other issue, they will go through this process to come up with an effective solution. Here's another one, IDEO. So this is from another organization, International Design and Consulting Firm. They modified it a little bit, right? So according to them, they also have 5 phases, by the way. Discovery, right? finding out first. So I have a challenge. How do I approach it? So you have to start this when you have a challenge, right? Number two, interpretation. So you need to define and interpret the challenge. What is the challenge, right? So I learned something. How do I interpret it? Number three, ideation. I see an opportunity. What do I create? So you discovered something, you interpreted it, you understood that, and then you come up with ideas. And then comes the experimentation. I have an idea. How do I build it? So it might be a physical product, it might be an idea, it might be a mobile app, website, book, anything for that matter. And the last is also very interesting. It's called evolution. So you keep trying until your product is perfect. I tried something, how do I evolve it? So it keeps on testing until you get the right product so that you can go to the market. So this is another concept, another way of looking at design thinking. Here's another one from Google. Google also uses design thinking, right? So they use this for all kinds of application to change their browser, change their home pages, change their applications, everything, including their languages, whatnot, right? So they also have a very similar thing. Understand, define, diverge, decide, prototype, validate. Similar to the original concept, right? So first you try to understand what the challenge or the issue is. You define that so that you are clear about what the issue is. Then you diverge. Diverge means you look at all the possible options. And of all that, you try to decide what is more suitable. And then you start experimenting. You prototype few of those. Then you need to validate your prototype back with the users to make sure that your prototypes are good, they are suitable, right? So after you try few prototypes, you will be able to come up with something final, right? They do it all the time. Now, if you remember how Google, actually Gmail was launched long time ago, or 20, maybe 25 years ago. For a very long time, it said beta, Gmail beta. That the word beta was never removed. So they said this is experimental. So they keep on trying various things to present the Gmail screen. Some are not very big, some are very subtle, right? So they keep on testing, listening to people and checking all that for a long time. And now the beta is no more there because they think they got enough feedback, enough experimentation is done. So now they go with the final version. So this is Google type 2 design sprint. So it's a 5-day thing. Day 1, understand. Day 2, diverge. Day 3, decide, prototype, validate. So understanding who are the users, what are their needs, what is the context, competitor review, formulate strategy. So what do you mean by context? Now, if you take the Bindi issue, the context is Indian women have a iodine deficiency. The context is the children are not healthy, right? So that is the context. So the competitor review, what other people are doing. Now, India may have looked at what Sri Lanka is doing. We have added, we also have the same problem. In Sri Lanka, what we did was we added iodine into salt. And government brought in a rule that we cannot sell salt without iodine in Sri Lanka. And salt is something everyone is using. And we generally buy our salt. So when we buy a pack of salt, it is already iodized. So everyone in Sri Lanka is automatically getting their dose of iodine. And then formulate the strategies. Whatever strategy that is more suitable, you come up with that. Diverge. Under that, envision, develop lots of solutions, and ideate. So you come up with all kinds of ideas. No idea is treated as bad or crazy. You look at every possibility, right? And then decide, choose the best idea. In order to do that, you can do something called storyboarding. Storyboarding is where you take a piece of paper, generally it's called a sticky note, the yellow color sticky note. You write down the idea briefly and you paste the whole thing on one single board. So in one single board, you can look at all the ideas. The advantage is then you can look at the connections, and then maybe you can do grouping, right? So you then easy to do grouping, connections, and all that. And then with those connections and groups, you start prototyping. Build something quick and dirty to show to users. Focus on usability, not making it beautiful. So that's very important. A prototype is a prototype. Or in our application building, we call it MVP, or we call it throwable app. So the whole idea is design something very quickly, show it to the user, and throw it away. We make a big mistake by redoing the same prototype and try to fix that prototype. You must throw it away and restart again with a fresh one. So people might think, okay, I spent a lot of time designing, developing, coding this, so I can't throw this. I'll try to fix this. But you will be wasting a lot of time trying to fix something because you build it to throw away, right? So we need to get into that habit of throwing away and then starting again. And the last one here is validate. Show the prototype to real users outside the organization. Now that is also important. Outside the organization or the group. Why? Because the people who worked on the idea or the prototype, they are biased towards their own thing. Like they are not throwing away the code because they love it so much. So you have to take it out from there and show it to the customers, the real users. And then they will come back to you again with various reasons and how to optimize it, how to change it. So you need to go back to the prototype and keep changing until you get a good percentage of satisfied users. Here's another idea. We are still talking about design thinking, okay? So this is coming from Austin Center for Design education program, right? So they say, like a spiral, there are lots of different things vertically. So first, you identify the problem opportunity area. That is called ethnography. And then you have parallel lines discovering various ways. All that come into some focus where you decide on, okay, this is the issue, and we are trying to figure out a solution for this problem. So that is where you start the ideate step. And then you look at, okay, how other people solve this problem before. Okay, this problem may have not solved by other people, same problem. This may be a new problem. Then you will start thinking about, okay, similar problems, how did they solve? That is called a synthesis. You bring in new things and go through a whole process to figure out what happened. Now there you may have to do iteration, meaning multiple lines, multiple times you have to do the same thing to figure out what is the best one. So that's where you refine the idea. So you may have to do prototyping, testing, all that. You keep on checking up with lots of different ideas. Once you have something, you move forward to prototyping, right? So that's where you validate with your customers. So there may be more than one way of doing it. So you validate, and finally, you implement the best solution there, right? So you can see different people have different visualization, different ways of doing the same thing. We are still looking at how to satisfy the best way to our customers. Okay, so here's another one. Deep, it's called design thinking. This is coming from Mary Cantwell, a design educator. So what is this person saying? It's a human-centered approach to learning, creating, and being through empathy, right? So here, the idea is discover, empathize, experiment, prototype. Right? Again, a very similar way of using that word, learning. You may have heard of a company. This is originally a German company called SAP or SAP. They are one of the world's largest ERP solution providers, enterprise resource planning solution providers. Right? So they have a very complex set of software applications for all kinds of companies, whether you are a manufacturer, you are an education organization, you are a service company, anything for that matter, they have a solution for anybody. Now, their system is so complex, but they need to make sure whoever the user is, they can get their things done. Now, if you take a manufacturing company, let's say Unilevers, right? They manufacture a range of products from soap to food items to shampoo to so many different things. So how do they satisfy each, let's say, department or the users using their software? Not the customers. If you're looking at from the user's point of view, the users using the SAP software, right? So they also have a way of getting things done. Start by planning, okay? And then doing research, whether it is a screen, whether it's about buttons, whether it is about the colors, they start researching with people. And they design, they come up with various ways. And they try multiple versions. There are different ways of doing things. So try to adapt to user needs and again come back and redesign. So they use a lot of analytics to measure the success of their design. For example, there is something called A/B testing, where you have two designs. You give one set to one set of people, one design to one set of people, another design to another set of people. So thereby, you have two people, two actually groups using two different versions of, let's say, a screen. Say adding an invoice, you come up with a screen, you give it to two different groups, two different designs, and then you measure it. Measure meaning how long does it take to, let's say, complete a form, right? Let's say you in one screen you put the button on the top left hand corner, other one you put the button on the top bottom right hand corner. You can measure it and see how many people clicked immediately, how many people took a while to figure out where the button is, right? Or maybe you are changing colors. You come up with, say, gray color button, you come up with a green color button or a red color button. So you can check how people behave, right? So you're measuring it. And with that result, you can realize, okay, if I do this, let's say red color, bottom right-hand corner button is more effective than others. So then you go with that. Another one from again SAP, right? So first you look, explore and empathize. You look for issues, you look for improvements, and then you synthesize, you start thinking about it, as in, this is where you need experience. So if you don't have experience, there is nothing to think. So you need to get the people with experience. So it may be users. Of course, the users are the best ones with experience because they've been using this. Plus other people. For example, people who understand the theory of color, color harmony. People who understand, let's say, behavior of people, right? Psychologists, things like that. And so with that, you start experimenting, right? So you're getting into the inside. Why would people prefer a button on the left than right? Okay, or why people prefer green color over blue color or maybe red color? So that doesn't come from the engineering thinking. That might coming up from art theories, psychology theories, right? And then you idea generating and creating. Here's another one from the Design Council UK. So they have two very big distinguished areas: define strategy, execute solution, right? So under defined strategy, it's about understanding why and how, right? Understanding why and how. So there has to be something triggering this. Remember, in one of the examples we looked at, the triggering means there is a challenge, right? So who understands that? The only way to do that, or the best way to do that, is to listen to the customer. What does the customer say, right? So you wait for the trigger, then you try to understand. And then once you understood, you try to define. Understanding may require listening to so many different people and looking at so many different viewpoints also. That is important. And then with all that knowledge, you define. So next comes the vision and plan. So after defining, you need to figure out, okay, where are we going with this information now? This vision and plan, right? And then once you have a vision and plan, you execute it, execute the solution. So there you can see learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure. It's a cycle. So you keep experimenting, designing and learning and building and measuring. Now measuring, like I said, is where you bring in some stats, some statistics, some analytics. So whether it is a physical device, whether it is a software device, whether it is a design or a service, you can still measure. You just need to figure out how to measure. Anything can be measured, right? And with that, you scientifically arrive at a solution, because the numbers don't lie. The statistics will give you the best solution. So with that, you come up with the best solution. So here's another example, design for America. So two main things again, understand, create. Under understanding, there is identify, there is immerse, there is reframe. So reframe is actually, okay, let's go from the beginning. Identify is whether it is a trigger or a challenge. You identify the issue. Immerse means you go inside there with the customers. The people who are actually facing the issue, you go inside with them. Immerse. Reframing is trying to figure out what is going on here. When you are immersing, you need to observe what is going on. So that's where you can reframe it. Then comes the creation part. So you come up with ideas now. What are the new things we can do? And then you start building. Okay. You build and then you test it. Build, test, build, test. So until you get a better idea coming out, you start building and testing. So here's another way to look at design thinking. Okay, so we looked at different companies and how they look at the same problem. Yeah, the design thinking, or rather same process to come up with either new ideas, new products for existing products or new products, right? So let's go from one step at a time. The first step we spoke about was empathize, right? Understanding the audience. So under this, we are looking at their needs, their desires, their pain points. We try to understand all that. What do you mean by pain point? A pain point, as you say, a pain, it's difficult, it's not easy, right? So what is that pain point? We need to understand. Now, let's say I want to design an accounting application, right? So first I have to identify who are the people requiring the accounting package. Not only the accountant, there are bookkeepers, there are cashiers, there is government who's interested in the taxes, then there are customers, there are also suppliers. All of them are, we call it, stakeholders of this application. So when we identify all the stakeholders, we need to then go through each one to understand their pain point, meaning what is the difficulty they are facing. Now, if you say, for example, go to a cashier and ask, okay, what's your problem with the system? He or she will come up with all kinds of things. They might say, look, I need to know, let's say, how much to pay in the next coming week so that I can ask money in advance and keep it with me. Or how can I, let's say, generate a report in this information, whatever it may be, right? So you listen to them very carefully. So how do you do that? Okay, number one is interviewing. Sit with them, listen to them, and observe what are they doing. And you may also run a survey. If the numbers are large, you can run a survey also and say, fill this form or fill this survey. And you need to make sure the survey is easy to understand and it's not very complicated, and that a larger portion of the population, we call it, the people who are using, will participate. Otherwise, you will be talking to few people and try to understand the problem as it's everyone's problem. So when you're doing a survey, you need to make sure your sample size is large enough. We call it the representative sample is large enough. Once you do that, you look at defining what is the problem here, what is the challenge they're facing, right? So as it says, we need to have a very clear, very focused problem statement. So you have to write something called a problem statement, right? Now coming back to our app that we've been talking about, to-do app, you need to go to the users who are actually using the to-do app, right? And then try to understand what their problem is. And based on that, you can come back and write down what is the problem statement. So some people might say, I want it to give me a sound alarm. Some people might say, no, I don't want sound alarm. I would like to have a notification. Or some people might say, look, I want to categorize my to-dos. I have office work, I have homework, I have children's work. So how can I divide it among those? Right? So things like that. So these are the challenges or pain points from the customers. And then we try to define that into a problem statement. So we might say the to-do app should have categories. So the customer will never use the word categories. You need to figure it out. You can ask them, okay, do you like to break this into categories? Do you like to turn on, turn off notification? Or do you want to have more than one way of notification? You know, these are the questions we are asking. And according to the answers, you write that down. Right? So that is defining. And the third one we looked at was ideate. Ideate is coming up with ideas. And to do that, one of the most common thing people do is called brainstorm. What is brainstorm? Many people think brainstorming is a bunch of people sitting around a table and talking. Well, yeah, that is also brainstorming. But there are few people you have to identify in that brainstorming. And there are also certain disciplines, some rules you need to bring into the brainstorming. In the brainstorming, you need someone who can control time. Otherwise, one person will keep on talking without leaving anybody else to talk. So you need one person to call it a timeout and make sure everyone participates. That is the responsibility of this person. Then there has to be another person writing down all the ideas in brief. So he cannot judge the idea. He has to write down every idea. That is very important. Right? So no judging. There are no bad or good ideas. Keep on writing all the ideas. So once the timeout is done, once everyone is given a chance to give the ideas, then you sit down to filter it out. Right? So the second point is encourage a free-flowing and open-minded atmosphere, which is very important. So you're not judging people for the ideas, so just let it come. Write it down, and filtering happens later, right? Under the prototyping stage. So here we develop low-cost, quick, and tangible representation of the idea. So of course, if you have 100 ideas, we will not be able to create 100 prototypes. But that's where you will be filtering it out further. So out of 100, there may be 10 best. right? Out of the 10, you again bring it down to, let's say, 5, best of the best. And that you manufacture. Okay. So whether you create it physically or with a software, you can design the user interface by lots of tools like, Figma, XD, whatnot. So then you can take it to the user and then ask for feedback. So that's the last one, the testing. So you show what you have done by distilling down all those great ideas into something small. You go show it to the customer and then keep on iterating. So he might say, okay, do it here, do it there. Well, you may not be doing it for one person, right? So it probably with a group. So it's not one person's view that is coming in. You need to remember that. So it has to be a group, a feedback. So it should be very democratic, where you give chance to everyone to speak. And then if somebody says, I don't like red, then he has to defend why he doesn't like red. Other people might like red. So some people might say, no, well, let's go with pink. So either way, there has to be a scientific method of selecting these ideas for the prototype and going forward. Okay, now since we are talking about user experience and user interface, why design thinking? Why are we doing design thinking? It's number one, customer-centric approach. Design thinking is all about customers, right? Everything about customer. So this is to understand and address the audience's needs effectively. So we need to understand what the customer actually needs. And then innovation. Remember, I said there are two things that can do. You can look at the existing products and try to make it easy to use by the customers, or you can come up with a completely new idea because you understood customers' issue, right? And the third one is data-driven decision making. So you don't just come up with various things. You need some scientific backing, some insight in order to get this going. And then the agility, what does that mean? Agility is being flexible. You are open for rapid adjustments to meet evolving market demands, right? And what does that mean? It means maybe the way you build your software. So we learn it later. There is, in fact, a method called agile software system where you open anything to change on a daily basis, right? You can keep changing it also. So that's called agile software development. Then the user experience. Create UX that resonate with the audience on an emotional level. What is that emotional level? We need to go inside the user's mind and figure out, okay, what makes them happy? What makes them sad? What makes them angry? Right? And then try to do that on the user experience. And the last is creating brand loyalty. So if you create something very user-friendly, easy to use, then people start liking towards it for the brand, right? As an example, if you take mobile phones, user interface is one thing, but interfacing with other peripherals. Now, if you take a Windows ecosystem versus mobile ecosystem, so if you want to use something new, you need to plug it in, you have to download drivers, you need to install the drivers and make sure the configuration is correct. All that you have to do, right? So you need to be a bit of a technical person to do all that, right? Now, on a mobile environment, they are not used by technical people mostly. So things should be seamless. Now, for example, pairing of a Bluetooth headphone. And if you notice, most of the Bluetooth headphones have only one button. So how do you use that one button for pairing? Right? So that's another design thinking challenge. Or if you take let's say, a thermometer, a digital thermometer has only one button, right? Now, so how do you control the thermometer with that single button, right? So these are all design thinking issues, and many people have successfully solved those issues. So you can bring that to your mobile application design as well. What is the challenge people are facing, and what are the ideas available, and what can we do about it? So when it comes to applying design thinking, right, where do we apply? Where do you see it? Right? Conducting in-depth audience research to understand their behavior and preferences, utilizing data analytics to gain insight into customer interaction and engagement. So if they are using something, whether it is a hardware or a software, you can actually get something called the user log, right? Many software support that. If it is a website, very easy to get it. Otherwise, if it is like an application, there are also available as well. Now, if you take a mobile app, that is also very easy to get. Google and Apple both have a repository of all the actions done by the users. How many people have downloaded, how many people have uninstalled it, how many people are using, various features, functions, all that can be brought in. If you are developing an application yourself, you can also maybe start logging into your, let's say, the application database yourself also. Then applying design thinking in the UX, defining the problem, right? So we notice the pain points and challenges are the ones we are picking up. So creative UIs. Now, what do you mean by creative UIs? Are the other UIs not creative? Well, this is where you need the skill of many different people. Remember, the psychologist, the artist, the technical person, marketing person, and of course the users. So with their input, you can come up with creative UIs. Some UIs are not, they look very creative, but they may not be very user friendly or not easy to understand what to do next, right? So no point coming up with creative user interfaces that are not useful or usable. Next, prototyping and A/B testing. Remember I said you can design something and give that design to one group and another design to another group. So that is called A/B testing, right? Now, A/B testing is for evaluating two versions of the same application, right? Whether it is a software application or a hardware device or a service, whatever. You have two versions which you give to two different sets, and after one set is done, you switch the product or the variation, give back to the same group. So for example, I have version 1 and version 2. I give version 1 to group 1, version 2 to group 2. I conduct a test. After the first round of testing is over, I will give the product version 2 to the group 1 and product version 2, product version 1 to group 2, product version 2 to group 1. So I exchange and run the same test. And the feedback and iteration is also very, very important. When you are testing with someone, you need to make sure there is a way to get feedback. Now, that may be by way of asking them to fill a survey, or you look at the social media activities, or you observe user testing by way of using cameras or recording their clicks and whatnot. There are different ways of getting user feedback, right? So by using this user feedback, you can fine-tune your product, fine-tune your prototype. And then comes the continuous improvement. What does that mean? So this is not a one-time affair that we are doing. This is a continuous improving business. So You test something, you get some results, you run it again. You test again, run it again, and then keep testing, right? Of course, you won't be doing it forever, but there may be versions. So we have something called a roadmap. Let's say, for example, some softwares have an annual launch, annual version release. That is why you see even companies like Apple, Google, Adobe, Microsoft, they have annual launches or annual revealing of their new versions. So they work for 1 year, listening to customers and trying to fix issues, improving the product or service, right? And then they launch it. So this is a continuous improving business. Now, under real life examples, let me switch to this one, the website. So we already looked at the Bindi, right? So here's another set of excellent products that they came up. Actually, these are new products thanks to design thinking. The first one is called the pill pack. What is the problem they are trying to solve? For many old by the way, this is also available in the LMS. You can click and go read this. It's under week 4. Design thinking example, this one, right? So have a look at that. So here, for many older adults, keeping track of when to take medication can be challenging and time-consuming. PillPack, an online pharmacy and a former startup in residence at Ideate that was acquired by Amazon, has sought to make the experience easier. So this was this is an online pharmacy, right? Many adults, mothers, fathers, grandparents, they take pills, they take medicine. They have a couple of problems. One, how do they order this on time? Because as you grow older, you also forget things. You are very forgetful. And going to the pharmacy, getting the medication, all that might be not easy as well, right? So the company came up with a home delivery system that organizes the medication into pre-sorted, easy-to-open packets, labeled by date and time, and sends them straight to your door. So instead of having medication in 5 different prescription bottles, in addition to vitamin supplements and all the, yeah. So now if you look at medicine, how they are taking, let's say if I'm taking 5 medicines, I will have 5 bottles, isn't it? Now I may be required to take the first bottle in the morning and night, second one in the afternoon, and the third one maybe only in the night. So I need to read the bottle every day to get it and use the medicine. So now what they did was they realized, okay, this is a problem. So people sometimes forget, they might not take one pill. So they don't give 5 bottles. They give a pack like this. It's called a pill pack. And all you need to do is take the first packet in the morning, and it has everything you need for the morning session. And another one for the afternoon, right? So you keep taking each one for every time. So you don't need to worry about which one to take in the morning or night or whatever. See how simple the idea was. So if you sit with the patients, if you sit with the people who are taking medicine, you will realize their problem. The problem was, one, they can't order. Sometimes they might get out of 5, 3 medicine, 2 is not there. Some to take in the morning, some to take in the afternoon. So it's a big problem for them. So they solve the problem using design thinking. Second one is another classic one, Airbnb. I guess you know what Airbnb is, right? So Airbnb is a company that brought in the concept of homestays, right? Homestay mean, like, if I have an extra room in my house, I can list that in Airbnb, and someone looking for a room to stay for either 1 day or 1 week or whatever, can stay here. They realize when they launched in 2008, it's not moving. People are not coming, people are not staying. So the business is not moving forward. So they sat down with the customers and say, why are you not using this? What is the problem? They say, look, I don't know. Until I go to that place, I don't know how it looks like. I don't know whether it is clean. I don't know whether they have internet. I have no idea. So it just says room available. So they said, okay, how can we do this? So then they realized everyone has a similar problem there. So now they came up with a standardized system for every house, every room. Like, for example, every house must change their linen, that is the bed sheets, the pillow sheets, and everything every day. So at least whenever a customer goes, they need to put a new set. And everyone must have internet connection. Everyone must have, certain minimum things. And then the photographs. They went to the house owners and said, okay, we need clean photos. They said, well, we don't have a camera or we don't know how to take pictures. So then they hired a team of professionals who will go to each house. This is in the beginning, by the way, to take some beautiful pictures and then put it online. So if you look at the second para, the early Andy team believed that people were hesitant to book through the platform because photos of the listing were low resolution and didn't effectively show users where they would be staying. As a result, they traveled to New York to spend time with hosts and help them take high quality photos, and revenue doubled. Their revenue doubled because of listening to people who are staying and also listening to people who have the rooms. Right? Another classic example of how design thinking helped an organization. Here's another one. A Willow. First wearable breast pump. Right? So what is the problem they solve? For new mom, breast pumping is a very personal part of motherhood. So these are for mothers who are working. Some mothers, what they do is they take the milk out and then leave it with their kids, right? So this one was a problem. So the solution was to have a wearable pump. So they don't need to stop anything to use the breast pump, right? It's a codeless pump that fits into the bra. Below followed a human-centered approach, interviewing dozens of mothers with a wide range of experiences and using insight on their breast pumping routine to build more than 60 prototypes. So they built 60. And they found that women wanted a product line that felt more like an accessory than a mechanical device, would allow them to pump anywhere, and was easy to assemble and clean. So these are the problems or the challenges they face. These learnings led Willow to final pump design that makes breast pumping easy and convenient. Uber Eats. We all know about Uber Eats. Now that's a classic example where they came up with a solution. What was the problem they were facing? That's a very, very good example on how they solve the problem. So what was the problem they were solving? The Uber Eats connected people to restaurants in cities all over the world, and each place has its own individual food culture and ecosystem. Uber realized that to create a product that would address the unique needs of each city, it needed to immerse and learn about the varied experience. So if you look at Sri Lanka, we have one way of handling food. If you look at, let's say, the Arab country, they have another way of handling food. If you look at the Western countries, they have another way of handling food, right? So they sat down with the customers and the restaurants to understand how to connect people together. I'm sure you now know even a roadside small shop can start sending food through their Uber Eats platform. And for a customer, I can now order from not just one or two restaurants in my city. I can order from hundreds of restaurants nearby cities also, right? So, so the team run experiments with built prototype to create features such as the most popular item category. Through research and iteration, the app has continued to evolve and transform the experience of food delivery. So they continue to evolve the application as well. This is a classic example of how they use design thinking to come up with a new product. Now, Uber is a taxi company, right? Now, they came up with the food connection as well. Here's another example. Paid plan. This is from Amex, so American Express, right? So this is about managing your money, right? So how do you want to manage? Monthly payment of 148, monthly payment of 75, or monthly payment of 50. So depending on how you want to spend the money. Say you're going to buy something, but then you may not have the money now. This is unlike credit card or unlike monthly payment. So this is a different way of doing this, right? So it features that give card members more flexibility and control over their money. Pay allows you to make payment on small purchases that are less than $100 throughout the month while still earning rewards. While plan, it makes it possible to split large purchases of more than 100 into equal monthly payment with a fixed fee and no interest. So if you want to spend more than $100, you can split that, saying if it is 400, I would like to pay $100 each month, something like that. I think we are familiar here in Sri Lanka. If you look at some companies where they say pay monthly without interest, this is a very similar thing. So let's say Abans.lk. Where should I go to buy Abans, right? Yeah, it's buy Abans. Okay, let's say I want, okay, let's see whether they have any. Oh, here, installment plans up to 60 months. Commercial bank, Panacea, so they have installments, right? So let's say I want this one. Okay. Let me click this. A vacuum, right? So easy payment plans available up to 60 months. So they don't talk about any interest, but the price is 24,9990. Pay in dollars, extra 5% off. Okay. So if you have a commercial bank, you can pay 500 rupees a month, right? So of course it depends on how many months, how many years, but this is a similar aspect. People want to buy, but they don't have the cash in hand, so they prefer paying on a monthly basis. But at the same time, sometimes you may pay extra. So American Express wanted to come up with a plan where you don't pay anything extra, but still can purchase, right? So in Sri Lanka also we have interest-free monthly installments. This is very similar to that. Here's another example from Google. Project Blocks, right? A Google project that keeps children to learn coding. So they came up with very simple gadgets which you can hook, right? You see, there are pins here. You can plug it together, right? And by coming up with, this is like a Lego bricks, right? So this is about programming using little blocks, right? To discover how kids physically play and learn, they use materials like foam cores, As you can see, this is a beautiful project to teach young children programming, right? Again, how did they do that? By sitting down with children and understand how they work, and also sitting with teachers on understanding how they teach, or what do they want the children to learn. So together, they came up with a system called Google Blocks. Here's another one. Birth control support for women, right? So again, many kids, because they do not learn about sexual reproduction, they get into a lot of trouble. In the US, it is 70%. Look at this. I think in Sri Lanka is probably the same or more. 70% of the pregnancies among 18 to 29-year-olds are unplanned. So what is the solution? Is a multi-touchpoint birth control support system that provides comprehensive education to young women across the country. The website share. So this is a website teaching them about childbirth or pregnancy. Right? So another problem, a challenge, and then they came up with a solution for the same. So how did they do that? They interviewed young women to better understand how they view sex and pregnancy, and spoke with doctors, counselors, and experts to get broader context on reproductive health. So their insights inform the design bedsider to make it more effective resource for birth control education. I think in Sri Lanka also, we don't talk about it in school or anywhere in the society, and because of that, we also get into a lot of trouble. Another very good product is Brown Oral-B electric toothbrush. This is something again designed completely with the user input, right? So this is the new electric toothbrush. They originally wanted to create a high-tech device that could provide in-depth data on people's brushing performance. So after consulting with designers, the team decided to include different features that better met their consumer needs, and developed a Bluetooth that can be both charged through a USB port and connect with an app to easily order new brush heads. So they have, now you can see, you can charge it from your computer. There is also an app where you can order the new top, right? new brush heads. The team research with their users allowed them to discover that people were typically already nervous about not brushing properly, and that such detailed data on hygiene habit would increase their anxiety. A key insight was that people were looking for ways to make brushing less stressful. So, when you research, they found out some people don't like to talk about their, hygiene due to various reasons. So, and also there's anxiety and all that. So they wanted to bring the stress level down and make it very simple to use it. And another one, Moonrise, a platform that connects people with on-demand work. Now, this is an app. You can look at it very closely. Yeah, check it out. In the US, more than half of people don't have cash to cover emergency expenses. So it's like, you're going to job, you make money, you spend it, and then you don't have money in an emergency. So how do you handle that? So Moonrise is a digital platform that matches workers looking for extra shift with potential employers. It allows people to easily sign up for short-term on-demand work with a partner organization via phone and get paid as soon as they finish. So they can earn extra money to pay for unexpected bills and other expenses. So this is a good product for you to analyze and see whether this is suitable for Sri Lanka as well. I don't know, right? Conceptually, it is solving the problem of students who need extra money. It is also solving the problem of companies who need short-term people to employment. I can give an example. Now, let's say SLTC, when we have exhibitions, we need people to distribute handouts. We need people at the booth to speak to potential customers, all that. Yes, we do have a lot of staff, but we don't have everyone available all the time. So we go out, we reach for, most of the time we reach for university student. Sometimes we can't get our student because they are busy with exams and things like that. So then we speak to other universities. So it's a hassle. We do have this problem, right? If there is a platform like that where people with time can advertise what time they are available and sort of skills they can give and things like that, there may be a system that people can start using. I don't know whether we have a solution like that in Sri Lanka yet. Here's another one. LA County voting system, an intuitive and accessible voting device. This is about voting, right? Now in Sri Lanka, we use pen and paper still. India, it's completely digital. With 1 billion people, they can do a digital voting. And it is very successful, right? So here in US, they wanted to come up with a very simple voting device. Touchscreen navigation voters through the process, then provide a printed paper ballot that is placed into an integrated ballot box. There are 11 languages supported, and for those who are low vision, audio provides clear instructions. So they still take the paper out, but you can look at the Indian example where it is completely machine based. So you use the machine to give the vote so that the result is instant. Another one, Bendable, a community learning program for South Bend. So the team interviewed more than 75 residents, librarians, business owners to understand the needs of the South Bend. Their on-the-ground research led them to realize that many South Bend residents wanted to learn from community members, yet at the same time were underconnected. So this is again another mobile app where they connected with people who want to learn and where the resources are, like the libraries, the teachers. Like in Sri Lanka, we have a tuition, right? Tuition for university student, tuition for school. I guess that we have enough. But what about the other skills? Let's say someone want to learn woodworking. Where do they go? Someone want to learn painting. Where do they go? Right? They might not have time to go through a diploma in painting and stuff like that, or to get an NVQ certificate. But generally, they go to YouTube and watch something and then try to figure out something or the other. So that is the kind of problem these guys were solving specifically for a certain area in the US. Right. So today we looked at the concept of design thinking. We looked at what it is, how it is helping companies and people and customers, various parties to first understand what the issue is, what the challenge is, and then sit with them to figure out how they want to um, tackle this. And then you go through a very systematic approach to come up with the prototype, and then do some trials, and then finally give a solution. Of course, it may not be one solution in the beginning, but you will arrive at a good solution. So we already saw some great examples from around the world, right? All these examples. So I loaded all this for you to have a look in our LMS. So go to week 4, go through this whole thing. I also hope you are looking on the assignments, right? And for this week's one, I will load in another day or two, so you can have a look at that. Any questions, anybody? No questions? All right, I'll see you around then. Please keep checking the LMS for other additional information.